My guest today is Jim Wither. I've known Jim since I moved to Bastrop County almost 4 years ago. Jim's a neighbor of mine, a good friend of mine. We share breakfast together with some friends every Wednesday morning. It's kind of my personal board of directors. Jim's an important member of that. In this conversation, we talked about his history, his past with his wife, Mariella, where they met in the early 60s. We talked about how he proposed to her. We talked about how our friendship originated, the camaraderie and learning from older mentors and younger friends. We talk a little bit about politics in this episode, which we typically avoid, but I think it was a useful discussion. We talked about preparing for the worst and dealing with financial hardship. All of Jim's professional development is colored with ups and downs, and I think that story was really, really useful. With that said, I hope you'll enjoy this very broad discussion with my good friend, Jim Wither. We're different in this respect. It's one of the reasons why I think our marriage works so well, is that she, if left unchecked, is very particular and would be so particular as to be, she wouldn't have time for anything else. She would want things all put in place all the time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I am a slob by comparison.
Yeah. And Mariella was that way. We call her nailed and neat.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't, like, if there's dust in the corner and, you know, laundry's not done, I'm the type that if I've got a buddy coming to town or a buddy calls me, hey, I'm going to be coming through Smithville in an hour.
I'll be there.
Come on. Come to the house. I don't care if the yard's mowed. I don't care if the laundry's done.
Yeah.
Any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So if that is left unchecked, it's equally unhealthy.
Right.
So there's a good sort of a tension between us.
Well, but the two of you make it go.
Yeah. And it's not, we talk about it a lot in my professional life. We talk about that tension not being opposition, but it's an opposing thumb. It's a functional thing. So yeah, we're opposing in the way that we're wired, but it's
right.
You can pick stuff up with it. It's functional. You've been married 63 years to Mariella?
63 years, yeah, to the same person.
To the same person. How did y'all meet?
Same woman.
Do you remember the meeting day? How did y'all meet each other?
Yes. As a matter of fact, we were at college at A&I in Kingsville, and they always had a dateless dance on Thursday night. So all the girls would go and all the guys would go, you know, and it was a lot of dancing around. So I saw her over, actually, she was a high school cheerleader. And I first saw her, I went to a high school game at A&I Stadium. And I ran into a friend that I had gone to grade school with, and he had moved down to Kingsville. And Joe, who's that cute little gal down there, that cheerleader? And he was a friend of hers. And so anyway, at the dance, you just go over and ask the girl to dance, yeah? So I did, and there's her story and my story about this.
Okay, tell yours first.
I went over and asked her to dance and introduced myself. I said, I'm Jim Wither from Taft, Texas, majoring in accounting. Okay, and she was actually a high school girl at the time, a senior. And so we danced, and we got along dancing pretty good. And 6 or 7 dances later, I went back and I went through the same routine. I'm Jim Wither from Taft. I'm an accounting major. And well, that was good. Anyway, her story is that I wanted to make sure that she knew who I was. And she said, I think he forgot me all those times.
It's interesting that your college major was part of your introduction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You just wanted her to know you were serious?
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
It's got possibilities.
That's right. Yeah. He's at least aspiring to something.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
So 63 years, starting in South Texas.
Down in Kingsville.
In Kingsville.
Right, right. And it was a good school. As a matter of fact, we were in the NAIA and we won the national championship my senior year in football.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the 1959 class, or school year in the fall, 59. And we went to, I think it was Jacksonville, Florida for the national championship, and beat Hillsdale College, which is up in Michigan, I think.
Huh.
I'm not sure where. But we were undefeated, and it was just, football, and if you're in a winning situation, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long after y'all met did you become an item?
Probably a couple of 3 years. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I graduated in 60, and I need to think about this. And I don't know why. It should come easy.
Don't tell her that.
Yeah.
We won't show her this.
Yeah. So I graduated in 60 and moved to Denver. And I guess it was, probably the 59 year. She graduated from high school in 58. So anyway, and then in the fall of 1960, she was a cheerleader at A&I.
Mm.
And I had moved to Denver, and we were an item before I moved. So I was up there a year, and I'd asked her to marry me. So then in June of 61, we got married.
Okay.
So it was probably 2 years before we got married that we were a pretty good item.
How do you do long distance relationship in that era?
Yeah.
Was it letter writing? A lot of phone call?
No, not a lot of phone calls because they were expensive. It was all long distance.
Right.
Yeah. A few letters, and I went back a couple of times. Actually, we had in the spring of 61, the school had it was a lantana, big, the queen of the school and all her maidens was, we had a big parade in downtown. I went back for that and asked her to marry me at the time. Got engaged. Actually, probably had asked her before that. Another thing that was interesting about that, I was working in Denver, and I knew I was going to ask her to marry me, so I went to a jeweler and picked out her wedding ring. And he was pretty proud of it, and so he put it in his window at the jewelry store. And it was probably just a block away from the building I was working at. So every day, of course, I had to go by every month and make a payment on it. Anyway, I'd go down and look at that ring just about every day.
Just out of excitement?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Does she still have that ring?
Still wears it.
Still wears
it today.
That's cool.
Sure does. She's got a ring guard around it, but it looks nice. I'm proud of it.
I remember when I knew I was going to propose to Ashton, I had one of her friends kind of trick her into telling her what she would want in a ring. Mm-hmm. And I kind of knew some sort of guiding principles, but I wanted to get real close to what she would want.
Right.
And we went to 4 or 5 jewelers in a day. Mm-hmm. And the very first one we went to, the very first ring that we looked at was the one that we ultimately
That's great.
settled on.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I picked this one out. Now, she did say she liked baguettes,
Okay.
So
you had some hint.
Yeah, I had a little guidance on that.
Yeah. Well, I did want to say before we go too far how much I appreciate you being willing to do this, because I know it was not an easy thing for you to just want to jump in and do. Yeah. And it's not, for a lot of the people I've talked to, you would think on its face this is not a big challenging thing to do, to just sit and have a conversation like we would over coffee.
Yeah.
But the moment you introduce studio environment and cameras, it gets a little weird. So
very professional. I mean, this is it.
It's a nice studio, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Matt and his team have done a really good job, and it's been fun to come in here. Yeah, this room. I've had some really good conversations in this room so far.
I bet you have. Sure.
And it's getting to the point now where all of the technology behind the scenes, I kind of lose track of.
Yeah.
I don't pay a whole lot of attention to it anymore. So
Well, sure, it's I can see it, but I can see why you know.
I'm comfortable in it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wonderful.
So, okay, there's a lot of directions we can go, but I wanted to ask you first, let's talk about our friendship. Because we have, I would say, an unlikely friendship.
Well, we're neighbors to start with.
That helps.
Good, yeah, good neighbors.
Yeah.
Of course, I met you when Helmicks were introducing you there at the house. And I don't know how much later it was, but there you were sitting by yourself down at the bakery having breakfast. And I must have been having it with somebody else, or must have been a couple of us go in. I don't remember who it was, but there you were. I was glad to see you and introduced you to whomever was with me. And I think at that time we said, I don't know, I don't remember exactly. Did we say we ought to do this, or did we have breakfast first? Or?
Yeah, we had run into each other at Old World, and I don't recall who you were with either, but I remember saying, yeah, I'm looking for a good place to sit and have breakfast.
You're right.
And then I think that afternoon I had run into you in the gate that adjoins our two pastures.
You're right, probably.
And we had talked about seeing each other over we had talked about breakfast because we both like to eat breakfast.
Sure.
And then had talked about, I had asked you where are some good places around here to have a breakfast. I like to go.
Yeah.
And you had named a few
at
places.
the Mexican restaurant in Anita's first few meetings.
The first one we had breakfast tacos across from the high school.
Really?
We went to that little Mexican food place right there by the high school.
That was Taqueria Picante. Yeah.
And then the next week you had said...
That must have just been you and I.
It was just you and I. And then the next week, well, at that breakfast, you had said, hey, let's go and do this again next week, and we'll go to another spot I'll show you. And that was Anita's.
Yeah.
And then we had a good conversation there. And you said, well, let's do it again next week. And I think it was after, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks of doing it, you had said, hey, I've got some
buddies. Let's have a men's breakfast time.
Yeah, I've got some friends that might join us.
You were really wanting to meet some people, and as it turned out, you were the youngest and still are.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of the fun stories I tell to people when they talk about, moving towns is not an easy thing to do as an adult. Because even though Ashton's family's from the area, a lot of her childhood friends have moved on, so we're kind of making friendships from scratch.
Right.
And so, having the breakfast group gave me friendships for the first several years of being here that I didn't have.
Well, that's good. It's still going, and everybody's really enjoying it.
Yeah.
That's the thing about it. I know that those of us that are in it look forward to it.
Yeah.
And if nobody's there, where are they?
Right. Yeah. There's something to that weekly cadence where it's predictable. We don't have to call each other to make sure it's still on. It's still on.
Sure.
Wednesday mornings, we're going to be there every Wednesday.
That's right.
There's something to that predictability that I grew fond of that sort of thing over COVID. I had a group, I think I've told you this. I had a group of buddies that about a week into lockdowns, about a month into lockdowns, we all realized this isn't good for us. We need to be seeing people.
Sure.
And so we had a campfire at my house. That was still early enough in the COVID era that you were still kind of being careful and staying outside, and we figured we can just do a campfire and still be relatively safe.
Yeah.
And we did it, and then decided let's do it again next week.
Good.
And we did it every week for the better part of 2 years before I moved.
Yeah.
So I was already in that mindset.
In that mode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought it up because I didn't have anything going like that at the time. You know, retired and just didn't have a regular meeting to look forward to that I remember. Anyway. Yeah.
It's nice to have that sort of a group of guys. For me, it's a group of elders. That's the way I look at it, is like a board of elders or a board of directors.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wisdom at that table.
You're the type of guy, though, that wanted to pick our brains. We had been through a lot, and how did we get through it?
Yeah.
So that was that was an aim that came out of this anyway for you. I don't know if you planned it, but the idea was like, I'm going to pick these guys' brain and see what they've done and how they did it.
Yeah.
I can remember that you said something along those lines anyway.
That's something I've always been purposeful about.
Mm-hmm.
Mentorship is something important to me because to not take advantage of people that are well beyond you in years and experience and maybe even learn from some of their mistakes so you don't make the same ones would be a mistake. It would be ego that prevents you from doing that. So sitting with you guys every Wednesday, it's not like every Wednesday we're sitting down and having deep philosophical discussions,
but it's up to date on things that are happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure is.
What's been interesting about it is I recognize that not everybody that's been at that table, a lot of guests will come and go, that there's people that are my age that I wouldn't necessarily want to spend time with. And that sometimes those people get older and you see them around a table and you just think, well, this is a group of elders. Not everybody at that table is somebody I would get along with outside of that context.
Right. Sure.
But it's been good to have that it's a well-rounded group. Not everybody agrees on everything.
Well, that's for sure. That's for sure. That's why we don't talk about politics or religion.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was one of the parameters we set. Okay, there's no politics, no religion at this breakfast.
Yeah.
And it's worked.
It's worked.
Yeah, there's been a few comments laid out there, but
occasionally it drifts into politics.
Yeah. Not a lot though.
It's kind of hard to not have it drift into politics when it's a election year.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
You had asked me on the way over here if I had voted yet. Have you voted already?
Yeah.
Was this a harder year for you to vote in than years past? What's your sense of this election cycle compared to previous ones?
Well, I didn't vote for somebody as much as against the other one. This time.
Yeah.
Not to get into politics, but I'm not sure where we're headed.
Yeah.
With either one, which way we're going to go. But I'm not too confident that it's going to go well, whichever way it goes.
Does it worry you?
No, because there's someone higher up that's directing all this. It doesn't worry me, but I do feel like I kind of prepared for the worst. Trying to prepare for the worst financially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a time period that you can remember in your life that had the same sort of feeling of this era, this political cycle?
Economically, yes. I guess it was in 1985, 86, and 87. I was moving and grooving business-wise. I was in the real estate business, and I had a little bit of accounting going, and I was involved with buying 180 acres, and that was down in Gonzales County, and there was 3 of us, and we sold it out in less than a year for Texas Vet Program. Made money on it. Came back, and there was a guy that had 70 acres at 535 and 304. You know where Rosanke is, right where the school? Yeah, and the school was a part of that property. And got a call out of the blue, and he asked if I would be interested in buying that from him. He said, "I'll finance it. I think you're capable of developing it." A nice compliment. So I did. The profit that I'd made off of that 180, I put into that. And man, economy crashed. Oil went down everywhere. Real estate wasn't moving. The bottom dropped out a bit. And financially, I had a ball rolling. People owed me money, and I was owing money and owing. So the money was coming in here, and all of a sudden, I had property in Colorado, and the guy went bankrupt on me during this same time. So that ball kind of rolled over on top of me. I wasn't making a lot of money, because of the business. I was in the real estate business. And anyway, I got chopped down to my knees. So that I kind of fear that's coming on. I really do. I had a high school buddy that loaned me $10,000, and I did not go bankrupt, but I lost a couple of vehicles over the deal. I had my office building next to the fire station, where the mini storage units are. I lost that, but I didn't lose my house because of the homestead exemption, which was good. Anyway, I got a $10,000 loan, kept me going for a while, and things began to turn around, and here I'm standing up again.
Yeah.
So that was good. That was good.
Do you remember what that felt like?
Oh, yeah, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I really couldn't. Back at that time, and before that time, you remind me of myself. You're a go-getter. When I was in college, I worked for the Forest Service 3 summers in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. Had relatives there. That's my connection. So I moved to Denver, and I didn't have a job. I did an interview for a job in Texas because when I was in college, I fell in love with Colorado. So I moved to Denver, didn't know a soul, went up and down the street, knocking on doors, and two days later, I had a job in Denver. Nice, and matter of fact, we merged with Haskins and Sales within 6 months after I went to work there. Haskins and Sales was one of the big 8 CPA firms. So I got married then in June after I'd been up there since October. And we had one daughter while we were in Denver. Then in '65, we moved to Steamboat Springs. And a guy had an income tax business, and I went in there and asked him about the possibility of going to work for him. And also I said, I'd like to buy your business, but I want to wait a year because I want to make sure that my wife wants to live in a small town, Steamboat Springs. So it worked out. I bought his business, and maybe within a year later, I bought the building. He and I started a travel agency, and then we got a franchise for National Rent-A-Car. I had the National Rent-A-Car franchise. And then I bought an 8-unit apartment house. So I was moving along, I wasn't afraid.
Yeah.
I think that all this is going to work out. And then the big thing that didn't work out is that Steamboat Springs only had one bank and had about $40 million in deposits, and it was time for another bank. So I put together five guys, and we applied for a state bank charter. And we were going to capitalize for $350,000. And I had a minor interest because I didn't have a lot of money, but I was active. Anyway, so we applied for the bank charter, and we were turned down. And I had a call from the president of the largest bank holding company in Colorado, and they said, I'd like to visit with you. He says, I can get that bank charter. He says, I'll pay you $450,000 for your, you guys make $100,000, but it was just in stock. It was a stock for that part of it. He said, y'all can be the directors and all that. And I had gone to Denver and visited with him. And so I brought it back to this board. And they said, we all felt confident we were going to get the charter. And and the group said, if it's worth $450, we don't have anything. What would it be like if we got the charter? We were turned down again.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So that went to the wind. A year later, There's another, that guy had a bank in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. So I was pleased that I had the gumption to go after it. You know, I was sorry that there were 2 major stockholders out of our 5 that were, you know, turned us down because they had the major vote. But it was a friendly thing, you know. Anyway, I might still be in Steamboat Springs if we got in that charter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So was that the thing that pushed you to Texas?
Yeah.
What was that like? How did that happen?
To come back to Texas?
Yes, sir.
We had 3 kids by then, and Mariella was missing. Her parents were all still, my parents and brothers and sisters were still down here. So she began to talk about it. Oh, I think we ought to move back to, probably not get the bank charter had something to do with that also. And I said, well, no, you know, we've got things going here. And so I went to work one morning, and my biggest competitor, accounting-wise, came in and wanted to know if I'd be interested in selling my business. I said, oh, there's somebody besides Mariella talking to me now.
Yeah.
Anyway, we had a good conversation about it, and that was in 1975. And I was mayor pro tem at the time, Steamboat. So here, I had to just, what am I going to do with this? You know, I just had a lot of good things going. And, but I got a good price for it. I had 522 clients, tax clients. So I had 7 employees. We did everything by hand. No one any TurboTax back then. Anyway, we do it by hand. And then we had a photocopy machine. We photocopied the returns off. You knew what you're talking about. Copiers. Yeah. Oh gosh. And I had purchased my grandfather's home, a home my dad was born in. He built it in 1910. It was a big house. Financially, Steamboat Springs was very good to me. You know, I had that building, and I sold it and financed it. That was part of the money that came back in on top of me. The house, I paid $19,000 for it and sold it for $85,000. So Steamboat was real good to me. I loved the skiing. You know, I liked the outdoors.
Yeah.
Summertime in the forest, wintertime. If you didn't get out in the winter, it was a long, long winter. You had to get out and get in it. You know, otherwise, you'd just go stir crazy.
That's where the term cabin fever comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're in Steamboat until 75, and then you have an opportunity to basically liquidate and uproot and come here. Did it feel obvious to you at the time? Like when your competitor walks into your door and says, hey, we want to talk about buying you.
Yeah.
Did it seem like, oh, I know where this is going? Or were you still assuming that you were going to be there for a long time?
I would say within a year before that, I was definitely set. This is where I'm going to be the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And then that came up, and so I gave it a lot of prayer and what am I going to do, and I could liquidate and come down here. And same thing. I came down here and came into Steamboat. Smithville and didn't know a soul. And I knew that I didn't want to live in Austin or a city. I wanted to be out from it, a small town. I've always been in small towns, except that Denver part. But I wanted to be close enough that I could make a living going into Austin if I needed to, which I did. I ran back and forth for a couple of years. Sold the house. I broke even on the apartment. I did well on the accounting. And before that, the travel agency didn't do real well. It was just getting started. It was a new child in town, but it was a ski area, so there was need for it. Mm-hmm. But it costed me every month. We had an employee, and I got so at that time that I couldn't I couldn't take it. So I asked him. I said, Eldon, you know, I can't take this funding this travel agency every month. I would like for you to take it over from me. And he said, well, if I do that, I want the National Rental Car franchise too. So I walked away from it, and he kept it and did well.
That gave you a chance to fully liquidate, where you didn't leave any remnants of a profession there that kept you in that town.
Yeah. Well, it took a while to get it all liquidated, really, because we had already moved down here. I had not sold my home, but it was rented. I hadn't sold the apartment house, and that absentee ownership is bad, let me tell you. You know, I ended up just walking away from I didn't lose money, but I didn't make anything on that apartment house either, you know. I have hit a few home runs. All of them have been in real estate, though. You know, like that office building and my house up there and the property out here.
So when you move here, you start putting down roots. What did you do when you got here?
Well, of course, we bought the house out on the other side of Smithville, and a beautiful place. We visited about that a little bit a while ago. And being an accountant, there was Hurricane Steel Industries out of Houston, made chain link fences. They had a plant in LaGrange. So I went down there and found a job. And the main office was in Houston, and I was probably there, I don't know, 4 or 5, 6 months. And all of a sudden I was commuting to Houston to work every day.
Oof.
Yeah. And I became the controller of the company, and anyway, it was a situation where I wasn't pleased with the ownership, I'll say.
Yeah.
So I found a job in Austin. That took a couple of years. And then I think it was in 81 or 82, I decided, well, I'm ready to go try something on my own again. So I went with Molly Todd, realtor, and I had a real estate license also in Steamboat Springs. But when I moved down here, it was not reciprocal, so I had to sit for the exam again, and then you have 2 years experience, and then you can become a broker, or you apply for the broker. And anyway, I went through that process here. Molly Todd and I purchased the building that she's in now together, and by that time I've become a broker, and I just felt like that I could do better on my own rather than being involved with her in the business. She's done quite well. She's a really good realtor. I'm not down on her by any means. But I bought that little office building right on the alley across from P's flooring.
Yeah.
And a many storage unit, 10 many storage units.
Sure.
So I had run a real estate business and an accounting business out of there. And the mini storage unit was so easy, you know, bring me that check every month.
Yeah.
I forget that it's even out there. So I bought the property behind that. There's a garage apartment there sitting there now, but there's no house in front. It was that old house, and I rented both of them. And then I decided that, you know, if I add 10 more units to these mini storage units, so it'd be good. So there's a group that I let them tear the house down for the lumber and everything. And then about that time, everything collapsed, and so I didn't get the mini storage, the 10 units built. But the apartment house, garage apartment's still sitting there.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is good.
So let's pretend your fears are well-founded and we're in a similar time. And because you and I are similar,
in that regard, I think we really were.
What advice would you have given yourself back then, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give yourself, knowing you were about to go through that?
You know, it hit fast. I didn't see it coming. I really didn't. I wasn't paying much attention to the oil. Everything crashed in the oil. Well, I'm not into the oil business. And then the real estate fell. You know, I had a closing one a week. I had 52 closings that year. I think that was 1985. So, you know, things were going well for me in Smithville, Texas. And then that hit, and I wasn't prepared for it. The way everything was rolling with me, it was doing good. It was doing good. And man, it hit me upside the head, and I slowed down after that.
Yeah. Is there anything you would have done differently in hindsight? Or any advice you would give to your younger self if you had to go through it again?
I would have probably arranged my financing to help me get through it. I would have had a good nest egg. You know, I had a lot, but not a lot of liquid.
Yeah. Having some kind of backstop.
I was real estate poor.
Yeah.
You know, that 70 acres I had purchased, I ended up deeding that back to him. You know, instead of him foreclosing on me, I deeded it back in lieu of foreclosure. So I was down to my knees there for a while.
Yeah.
You know, just to proceed on this line.
Yeah.
The county was looking for an auditor, and my buddy Charles Pinnock came and said, and incidentally, the county auditor is hired by district judges. So even though you're at county court and dealing with commissioners, you have the say-so over them financially. Because county court is not the boss of the county auditor. The district judges are. So I gave it some thought and I interviewed for it. And then I said, no, I don't want to do this. And I guess a month or 6 weeks went by, and it was pretty hard. So I said, okay. I went back and asked Charles, is it still, yeah. So I talked to them, and they hired me. And I said, I will do this if I can continue still real estate on the side, even though I'm an employee of the, oh yeah, because the salary was low. So anyway, I ended up being there for 15 years.
15 years?
15 years as the county auditor, and retired. I was 50 at the time, retired when I was 65.
Huh.
Thank goodness I did, because it's been a godsend. It really has.
Yeah.
Where does that all worked out?
Where does being a judge fit in with that whole timeline?
I retired in 2002, and in 2011, the big fire came here in Bastrop County. And the county judge then was Ronnie McDonald, and he wanted to run for U.S. House Representatives. So he resigned, and this was then in 2012, winter of 2012. He resigned, and I had a county commissioner come and ask if I would be interested in being an interim judge. And what a compliment that was, because I became the county commissioners asked me to be the judge, and that was 2012, 10 years after I'd retired. And I enjoyed it very much.
How long did you do that?
About 10 months.
10 months.
They said, we'd like for you to be the county judge, but we don't want you to run for it. You know, then you'd be basically an incumbent. And I said, I'm not interested in that. So I ended up being the judge and enjoyed it, and just Been around since then.
Then back to retirement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
How much has Smithville changed since you got there? You got there in
75.
75, and
How did it change?
how much has it changed since you got to the town?
Not a whole lot. There's not a big industry here. There should be an industry here,
Yeah.
or could be. The people are all real friendly. You know, we socially got quite involved with it and with them, and we like to socialize, just like you talking about. You know, people coming and visiting you, and having a good time. We threw quite a few parties, home parties, I mean. One of the things that when we were in Steamboat Springs they had was New Year's morning. It was called First Breakfast. See how many people would come to breakfast, you know, after they'd been out all night.
Since midnight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And anyway, we brought that down here to Smithville, and we probably did it for 8-10 years with the McClures. And we would have them out at our house one year, then we'd go to their house the next year. And we had pancakes and bacon and orange juice and a lot of fruit.
Huh.
And we had 100 people.
100 people.
Yeah.
A big party.
Come out to our house and for first breakfast.
Yeah.
And some of them we usually receive weren't there. I don't know why.
You still do that?
Pardon me?
Do you still do that?
No, we dropped that many years ago.
I got you.
It was quite an undertaking,
Yeah.
you know, to get everything ready for it. But just the four of us, the two couples did
Yeah,
it.
that's a big party
Yeah.
for 4 people.
Yeah.
Do you and Mary Ella still dance?
Yes. I told you a while ago that the people that purchased the house out on Ships Lake, they had an open house, and they had a dance out there. The guy built a dance floor, and so we danced it a little bit. What was that, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
We belong to a dance club down in Schulenburg. They have 6 dances a year. If we're out in the evening and there's a band, we'll probably get up and dance just 2 or 3 times. My legs don't allow me to get out there too long.
You still got the boots.
Yeah, those are my dancing boots.
Are they?
Yeah.
They're good boots.
So I've had those a long time.
Talk a little bit about, this is a question I've asked a lot of people that have come in here. It's not a time right now that if you're paying attention to news, there's not a whole lot to be optimistic about.
Right.
But I've found that when you ask people what they're optimistic about, it sort of forces you to have to sit and think about, you know, what are the things that encourage me to believe that we're going to get through whatever this time is that we're in. So what are you optimistic about?
I love God. I know that God loves me. I have a devotion every morning. We do. And we go to the First Christian Church in Smithville and have for years. So I trust that God is going to get everybody through this. I mean, I guess I say everybody. I do trust that God is going to get us through it.
So your faith is what makes you optimistic.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure is.
Yeah.
Sure is. Incidentally, First Christian Church Smithville is a small church, and we've had several pastors come through there over the years. But right now, we have a black man as our pastor. His name is Billy Strackman. He is great. And, you know, I look at that as a very, very positive. And here, small Texas town, and he's the only black man that attends our church as the preacher. But we're open enough to have him, and are glad we're having him. And the church is growing. It really is, financially as well as membership. So he preaches from the Bible and is doing an excellent job.
Smithville is it's an old town. it's still very much segregated is probably too heavy of a word, because it's not segregated in the way that you would think of the segregation era, you know, places being segregated. But there's still very much the, like, this side of the tracks, this side of the tracks, and there's not a whole lot of I don't know if intermingling is the right word. I've noticed it through, like, in my childhood, where I played sports, all the sports leagues I was in, playing soccer, playing baseball, was in a part of town that was very mixed. You had Hispanic families, you had black families, you had white families, and we were, like, all of my teammates growing up, seems like we were all pretty evenly dispersed. You don't see that as much in Smithville. Is that just a remnant of the way it was set up as a town? Is that a tribalism thing?
I think it was just, it's the way the town was set up. And, you know, my kids went with color to school, and they, as far as I know, they all got along at school, but they never did, there wasn't much socializing going on with kids.
The church seems like the place for that to take place.
Yeah.
Like, if any place can be accepting of one another, and, you know.
Yeah. That's what we're so proud of, is that we are doing it. We can do it. You know? There is a black church that I understand has a few white members across the track. Yeah. So
I've talked to our pastor quite a bit about that, about just the way that town is separated, and that there needs to be some sort. I mean, for a small town to survive or to thrive, you would have to see the people on both sides of the tracks as your community members.
Yeah.
Even though you have a physical separating there, you still have these places where the community gathers.
Right.
Church should be the chief among them.
Exactly. When we moved here, they had a large swimming pool out close to where we used to live, and the highway was coming in, and that basically did away with that. It was run by the Lions Club, as I remember. And so then a few years later, they built a swimming pool across the track. The swimming pool did not integrate easily, so within a few years, the swimming pool closed. That was a poor example of good relationships.
You could see it. You could see it building through that community, building through the church. And I do think there's enough small churches around Smithville that are growing churches. Like our church, they had to add a third service. They're going to have to build a building in the next handful of years because they're outgrowing the building even with the three services.
Wonderful.
Yeah, but that community thing is something that's important to me. It's the way I was raised.
Let me just go back here just a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
Get this in. God has always been, since I was a child, a big part of my life. And it was in Steamboat, and it has been here. And as I go through these different times of my life, I sure ask for his guidance to get me through them all. And he did.
Yeah.
He has.
You pray a lot?
Yeah.
How often?
Daily. Often and within a day.
Throughout the day?
Yeah.
So do you like start your day with prayer and have just times where you check in, or are you just constantly praying?
You know, you should pray all the time, and I don't.
Yeah.
But I do off and on every day.
When God speaks to you, when you feel like you're hearing God speak to you, what does it sound like?
Calmness, peace.
You ever had a circumstance where you felt like you audibly heard God speaking to you?
No, I haven't, but I've definitely feel his presence.
Just through peace?
Yeah. This morning before we ever started, I've always used this or known that God is with me. God is with me. God is with me. I'm not here alone. It's going to be okay.
praying for peace about being interviewed?
Yeah, sure. Guidance. You bet. Feel his presence. Yeah. I'm relaxed, so he's here.
I've had probably a similar experience. I envy people that have had circumstances where they feel like they heard God speak, where it was like an audible, obvious thing.
Yeah.
Voice speaking to them. That's never been my experience either.
Yeah.
It's been whispers. It's been little quiet sort of nudges.
No, we have a devotion every morning. Mariella and I did, and I had it myself this morning. We have readings from the Bible and Upper Room. I don't know if you've heard that. I love Billy Graham, his readings. These are daily devotions.
Okay.
We read through there and in prayer time as we go through them.
Yeah.
They usually last half hour, 20 minutes, half hour.
Yeah.
During coffee.
How much do you think about the end of your life?
I've got something right here that
Oh, boy.
might answer this question.
Okay.
Here's some notes that I have, all different types of prayers and everything. And I tell you, I'm not concerned about what's going to happen with my life. When it happens, it's going to happen right then. I'm gone. Even though my body is here, my spirit is gone. It's not lingering around anywhere. I think this is a great explanation of it right here. Jesus said, I tell you most solemnly that anyone who chooses a life of sin, no, it's not it. Anyone, I'll go ahead with this, finish it, who chooses a life of sin is trapped in a dead-end life and is, in fact, a slave. A slave can't come and go at will. Here it is. Everything which happens prior to death is a preparation for the journey. Death marks the beginning, not the end. It is a solemn, dramatic step in our journey to God. So it's not the end, it's just the beginning of the journey to God. I like that.
Another thing to be optimistic about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. I'm ready.
Yeah.
We're ready. We're kind of concerned about how things are going to develop still here without the other one around,
Sure.
But
I don't think about it as much. There's periods in my life where I get anxious about if something were to happen to me, what would happen to the boys, what would happen to Ashton. And I've found that it takes me out of being present with them and takes away from my ability to enjoy the days as they're here.
Sure.
Thinking too much about the future or worrying too much about the past takes you out of the present. But there's been times in my life when I've thought about it quite a bit.
And I think you should, obviously. We have more so within the last few years.
Yeah.
Well, what about this? And I know she can't take care of the place. I'm having trouble doing that now myself. So.
Yeah. Good thing you got neighbors.
That's right, going to bail me out.
That's right. That's right. Jim, I do appreciate you being willing to come in here and do this. I realize that it's not always a comfortable thing to sit and talk with a camera in the room. It's kind of the weird guy on the side of the room.
No, it's not, but I think I got over that pretty quick.
Yeah. That's typically what I've seen. We've taken some care to kind of mute the things that would indicate that it's recording. Like you don't see any red lights on the cameras. We've covered those up.
Right.
But it.
But I've glanced at it once in a while, but it didn't so much bother me.
It's there, but it's not in the way.
Correct.
But I do appreciate you being willing to do it. I have appreciated being friends with you and the group.
Sure.
Yeah, it's been meaningful to me to have those kind of weekly check-ins and have a good room full of wisdom.
When Helmick, when Gene and said they were going to sell, I sure didn't want them to sell it for a subdivision. They didn't, and we're very, very pleased, of course, to have you and your family as our neighbors. Good neighbors.
Yeah.
We've been good neighbors.
Yeah.
Well, let's continue.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah.
We have really appreciated knowing you all the
Yeah.
time we've been here. You've been great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for making time for this. I do appreciate it.
Well, good. It's great.
All right.
Great having you right here, being with me this morning.
Yeah, it is nice.